All right. Hello, hello, hello. We have a React video. We've waited a couple days on this. You guys really wanted me to watch this. I got a couple comments constantly about it. It's from Loud Guns. It's really about the title, right? Everyone's pissed off about master modes, and everyone is judging master modes. And his title says, it's too early to judge master modes. Before we ever get into the video, just based off the title, I do not agree. I think we are absolutely to judge about any of the features in the game and say whether or not we think they're bad or not. And that's what we did early on. Everything everybody is saying now are very similar to things that they said when Master Modes first released. The reason things are getting louder and crazier and more toxic is because of the amount of time it's been since the release of Master Modes. So let's see what Loud Guns has to say. He is normally a very level-headed, very balanced, and thoughtful YouTuber. So I imagine this is not going to be filled with emotion. It's going to be filled with logic and reasoning and thought. So I'm looking forward to this one. Let's see what he's got to say. Loud Guns.
Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. Today I want to throw my two NFTs into the ongoing debate on master modes that's been stirring up the SC community in recent weeks. Yesterday I listened to a great podcast by my friends Space Tomato and Avenger 1, and I found it really thought-provoking. And while I respect that A1 has a far better grasp of combat fundamentals than I do, I find myself not quite agreeing that there is anything terribly wrong with master modes in principle. Personally, I think it's a combination of other things that are missing from the game that are holding back the flight model, and mean that the meta lacks depth when it comes to combat. So in this video we're going to explore these factors and discuss how, as they develop, more balancing and tweaking of the existing Master Modes flight model should hopefully start to make sense.
Okay. So right away, that's where I think it starts to, it's already maybe a bit logical, but also pretty flawed logic in the sense of if the ships do not move in a way that is enjoyable, fun, makes sense, and able to have depth in skill, then we're starting from a platform that is very shaky. And I think that's Avengers POV. So you want to have the foundation before you bring in things like, I'm sure he's going to bring up Maelstrom and these other things, right? I think that's the issue here with a lot of the high-end PvPers. And guess what? Yogi agrees with a lot of this stuff, right? Is that the foundation is still shakier than it should be, and they want to shore up that foundation. So I'm already in pretty strong disagreement 46 seconds
So if this sounds good to you, grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, then let's get into it.
Maelstrom will only add to the TTK. I don't want to talk over the really good intro, so I'll quickly touch. We saw the intention of Maelstrom, essentially, when it comes to armor and how that'll play in on this week's ISC. Every ship is going to have some level of armor. How much, how easily penetrated, there likely will be sizes or levels of armor that certain weapons can break through that others cannot, things like that. Does that have anything to do with Maelstrom? It doesn't need to. It's a component now. So Maelstrom isn't the thing that changes anything. I'm not stalling. It's just we're discussing. Damn, that's sick. 2 reclaimers out to salvage. Now let's listen to the good music.
As is tradition by now on the channel, before we get too far into the weeds, I'd like to make a small disclaimer. I am no combat ace. I enjoy a lot of the combat aspects of the game, and I dip a toe into the waters of PvP, but I'm very much a generalist when it comes to SC. If I do have to lean...
And that's okay, because the ace pilots are this much a percentage of the community. So they are going to play every day. They are going to be dedicated. They are going to decide the fate of war if we ever have that, right? But the people who are playing day in and day out, the people who count towards the numbers. I mean, if you're if you're Avenger 1 seeing this, for example, and is somehow taking this personally or something like that, it's not that. It is, if you like Avenger streams on Twitch, right? What is the most important part of your audience? Is it your subs? Or is it the most dedicated part of your audience? Or is it the people who are lurking in the background that make up a majority of your audience, that brought your viewer count up to where it is so those people can see you, so those people know that you're there, that so those people can end up supporting you? The lurker is the most important viewer of any Twitch channel. The casual, regular player in an MMO is the most important player, not the highest end player, right? That doesn't mean that the highest end player isn't important. They absolutely are. And again, they are going to decide the fate of a lot of the things in the game if the game develops in that direction at all. We don't know what they're going to do with it, but in traditional like PvP MMOs, right? So they both matter, and I don't think we need this disclaimer from Loud Guns, because everybody should be able to speak their mind on master modes if they've participated in it, which is why I tend to not speak much on master modes, which is why I'm nervous about watching this video, because I do not do ship combat because I don't find it fun, and the expectation was that they were going to make adjustments every patch or often, and then they didn't do that.
In one way or t'other, then I'd probably do so more towards the industrial aspects of the game.
Yep, same.
What I do think I can bring to the table is experience.
Me and Loud Guns are probably going to be competing orgs,
and the outlook of an org leader in Star Citizen. I run a sizable org, Frontier Consolidated, and while I very much enjoy the game as it is now, we do always have an eye on the horizon, thinking about what a more finished live release is likely to involve, and what goals we're likely to set out to achieve as an org. Coincidentally, if you would like to get more involved with multi-crew type gameplay, you'll find a link to our community Discord server down in the video description below. I think in order to frame this debate a little bit better, it's worth taking a few moments to step back and outline what CIG was setting out to achieve with the introduction of Master Modes. And probably the best place to source that is an ISC episode, Masters and Blasters. I'll include links to any videos I referenced down in the description as well. The key goal of the devs was to simultaneously bring the speed of combat engagements down, allowing flights to occur at a slower pace without all the boom and zoom that was happening before, while still maintaining the option to achieve high speeds that were necessary to traverse such a big game area. The type of combat the devs want to see in the game occurs best at SCM speeds, a couple of 100 meters per second. But in a game where you frequently have to travel hundreds of kilometers without necessarily using the quicker quantum jump mechanics, you still do need to be able to push up towards the 1000 meters per second mark to make that bearable. So the basic solution is Master Modes. One mode, SCM, allows you to use all your weapons, shields and countermeasures, but caps you at the lower speeds, while another, Nav, lets you achieve higher speeds as long as you trade off by losing access to the aforementioned ship systems. And when it comes to the issues that are being raised by the community, I would strongly encourage you to also watch Avenger 1's recent video on the subject and the podcast that he had with Space Tomato, again links down below. In the interest of time, I'm going to try and paraphrase the basic arguments, but obviously something will probably be lost in translation.
Probably, yeah.
As far as I follow, the core issues stem from firstly, the speed at which maximum speeds are hit. The maximum speeds have been adjusted down when in SCM, but the thruster acceleration is still roughly where it's at in a pre-323 flight model. So nimble ships like interceptors will hit that top speed incredibly quickly and then cap out all of it.
Yeah, but thruster acceleration is only going forward now, right?
Sudden, making the whole thing feel quite jarring. Secondly, the changes haven't really led to any improvement in the multi-crew situation. With smaller fighters, since they represent a smaller target, and particularly for the interceptor class are the quickest and most maneuverable, being best able to just kite out larger opponents, stay out of range, and out DPS them.
Is the reason that multi-crew is bad, is it because of master modes, or is it because turrets are still really bad and tuned really poorly? Right? I'm not sure. It's because of Hornets? Just Hornets? Geometry. I hear that word used a lot, but I don't quite understand what it means when it comes to flight model. Projectile speed is still bad. Turrets are bad because of Zoomy flight model. Okay. But we need Zoomy, a little bit of Zoomy, in order to get position on people, no?
And thirdly, that the damage model, combined with the relatively lower element of skill in terms of getting shots on target, mean that pilots are in a much more straightforward DPS race, skewing the meta towards ships with a combination of speed and the highest levels of burst DPS. The Buccaneer, for example.
I just straight up didn't buy this ship, and that's why I didn't enjoy Master Modes. Like, I literally stopped playing when this ship came out because it was awful.
All of this is adding up to a model whereby there is a lower skill ceiling, meaning that player skill expression matters less, and where the meta is increasingly rigid. However, as I alluded to in the introduction, I don't personally think that these are Master Modes problems. I think these are overall game balancing problems, and therefore I don't necessarily believe that Master Modes needs to be completely scrapped or reworked. We might run the risk.
If he was in an actual PvP Arena Commander mode, I would be kind of shit-talking him right now, talking about balance while using the most imbalanced ship possible.
Of judging the system
but he's
far
just
too
going
early
against
in its
NPCs,
development.
so it's all good.
I personally believe that when CIG talk about archetypes, it hints that they're heading for something of a rock, paper, scissors, class-based meta.
Yeah,
where
it's
no
what
one
they
ship
want.
is just the GOAT, and all types of ships have strengths and weaknesses. A little while ago I made the first episode of a series, Fleet Logic, which I'm really looking forward to resuming. In that I outlined different classes of ships, and what they theoretically should be strong and weak against in a fleet-based combat system. Capital ships should be your flag carriers, capable of deploying smaller ships to a flight, bringing heavy firepower, perfect against other large, slow behemoths, pretty much impervious to light fighters due to their heavy armor, but absolutely terrified of enemy bombers. Fighters
I've never heard behemoth pronounced that way. Is that how it's pronounced in England? Behemoth?
Should pretty much just be ignoring the big cap ships and corvettes since they can't damage them.
No,
Instead
okay.
focusing on taking out the enemy fighter screen since they'll be similar in terms of maneuverability,
I was like,
especially
what?
intercepting and
What did
dealing
he
with
say?
those
And then it
enemy bombers
registered.
before they get close enough to light up your cap ships. The issue here is that not all of the ships are even in the game yet. One of the reasons I held off making any more episodes of Fleet Logic for the time being is that I at least want the RSI Polaris in-game to represent a meaningful flagship for when we try to test things practically. So I would say that taking issue with the current game balancing, while absolutely fair, is a little bit premature. There are certainly a lot of steps that could be taken in the
It's what is happening. It's 2024.
Hello and welcome.
What point was I at? No, I
Skewing the meta towards ships with a combination of speed and the highest levels jarring. Secondly, the changes.
I think we're somewhere
First
here.
and foremost, I think we do need to see ship armor ASAP.
Okay, hold up. I'm skipping ahead.
So I would say that taking issue with the current game balancing,
Here we are.
while absolutely fair, is a little bit premature.
To say that we would be upset with game balance now being premature in 2024 when the intention was to have ship balance, flight, weapons, armor, countermeasures, missiles, and everything dialed in Arena Commander before we ever released to 2.0 is just something I have a really hard time hearing. That's hard to hear, and while he is correct in the sense of it's premature because it's the first iteration and they know there are issues and they know that they're going to do other things with it, and they know they're going to add more stuff. Yes, it is premature from that standpoint. But when did they add master modes, guys? What was the date that master modes was added into the game? Was it March? Was it March? I think it was around March, right? Or April? End of April? Can't remember. Yeah, 3/23. I think it was like April, May. May, June, July, August, September, and we're nearly in October. 6 months, and all they did was change the atmospheric flight characteristics of some ships. They did balancing at the very beginning in 3/23, but not much more after that from the standpoint of delivering on the feedback that was given to players, or given from players to the company. The company, we gave feedback, you did nothing with it, and now the community is mad. I'm going to hammer that point home over and over and over again. Yogi knows this point. We're in Discord. I expressed that I don't think a lot of people think Yogi is incompetent or team is incompetent, but I think people are really getting frustrated with the fact that Yogi is basically saying, hey, guys, we know, but then nothing's happening, right? And it's just like, yeah, there's some weapon balance that went on. That's the truth. Yep.
There are certainly a lot of steps that could be taken in the short and medium term to make larger ships more competitive with smaller ones and lead to just a better game experience for now. First and foremost, I think we do need to see ship armor ASAP. Personally think that the size...
This video was posted before ISC, by the way, so he's probably very, very excited for what he saw.
Weapons found commonly on fighters like size 2s and 3s simply shouldn't penetrate the armor of, say, a hammerhead. They should be able, if they can brave its guns, to assist in taking the shields down. But when it comes to the...
It will not change. Are you ready? So you really need to listen to ISC then, because some weapons, probably size-based, will have an armor-piercing percentage, but I think it's against certain types of armor. So ships like the F7 or the Buccaneer may really struggle to armor pierce a Connie, is what it sounds like. They may struggle to pierce the armor of a Connie, right? And they might really struggle to pierce the armor of something a lot larger, right? So then we're talking about torpedoes, Inferno, right? Now we're talking about this rock, paper, scissors thing that we're in right here, right? So this is something that, unfortunately put the video out a couple days too soon probably, but it does sound like it's going to be changing quite quickly, or quite soon, I guess, with 4.0, which soon and 4.0 don't really go together. But yes, whenever armor comes in, it sounds like it'll be, it will help some of the problems, but it won't solve them because, again, the foundation of the way the ships fly is what people have issue with.
They should pretty much just splat harmlessly against the armor. And speaking of the guns, I would love to see a buff to turrets in the short term, improving turret traversal speeds and aim assist, to make them more consistent when targeting smaller ships.
Let's start with traversal
balancing
speed.
Weapons so that the turreted ships tend to have range and projectile speed advantages over fighters.
And projectile speed, yeah.
Some specialist anti-large ship fighters, like the Crusader Ares, obviously occupy a different space in the meta. Yeah. And they should maintain advantages.
Essentially, Master Mode seems like a good idea, but the tuning of it was really, really bad so far. And he expressed that it was bad, but then we haven't fixed the bad, and that's what people are really annoyed with.
Over these large ships. But again, I don't think we should be talking overly about this ship versus that ship.
It sounds like Loud Guns missed AV1's point entirely. Well, AV1 is very technical when he speaks. I struggle with AV1's points a lot because we start bringing up pictures and it goes over my head. I am here, and Avenger 1 is all the way up here. And I can't connect with somebody up here yet. I can't. I need somebody here to help me get there. I don't know what AV1's point is, but I know when I've heard it before, is that the foundation of the flight tuning in this game right now is bad. The foundation of it, from a foundational perspective, it is bad. It's not, ooh, a little tweak here, a little tweak there. It needs a lot more than that. Is his
should be
POV.
Thinking more about NVN style fleet engagements. If your group brings
I don't need to watch the
hammerheads
podcast. He's
to
been
a battle,
talking about it for a year
you
and a
might
half,
have a
bro.
really groovy time if your enemy brought nothing but arrows, but suffer if you come up against a more diversified fleet that includes things like Ares or bombers that can deal with your anti-fighter corvettes. A blessing and a curse when it comes to Star Citizen is just how wide the appeal of the game is. Don't get me wrong, I think it's absolutely fantastic that we've got flight sim enthusiasts rubbing shoulders with FPSers and MMO nerds.
Yep.
But it can lead to some
cool.
occasions where we as a community are at odds as to what we want from the game.
I think what we need to accept is that not everyone is going to be an ace pilot. Not everyone's going to be a pilot, period. Right? I think that's a point where we need to accept it, is that the ace pilots are going to be the ace pilots. The so-so pilots are going to be the so-so pilots. And there's some people that are just going to be sitting in the back putting out fires. There's some people that are going to be putting ammo into ammo things. And there's some people that are going to be, the FPS players and that. Everyone's going to have a role at some point, we hope. And not everyone's role is going to be the pilot in master modes, right?
I've personally always been more on the MMO side. And while I appreciate that the flight model is more immersive than, say, Starfield, I've never really had a strong desire for hyper-realism. I always thought hyper-realism, when taken to the nth degree, would just make for a really boring game.
Yep.
I'm also conscious that in an MMORPG, sometimes simpler mechanics are actually better. If things get way too complex
More
at the
often
micro
than
level,
not.
it can become nigh on impossible to achieve any form of balancing in the game, and reward groups who organise themselves and field balanced raiding comps. I'm a massive fan of melee fighting games, for example, and while in an arena setting I prefer the complexity of a game like Mordau, that complexity wouldn't translate into an open world MMO setting as well as, say, the relative simplicity of Last Oasis's melee mechanics. When there's a lot of other stuff.
Last Oasis's melee was the only melee that I was good at. Oh my god, I was fucking good at that game, and I really enjoyed it. And then the classic MMO Zergs came, and I was just like, well, that was fun.
Stuff going on, coordinating with teammates, holding formations, making sure that you deploy people with the right weapons to deal with the right enemies, etc. It sometimes makes for an actually better game experience when you don't have 20 different ways to swing your sword. And with that in mind, I would also highlight another thing that I think is just missing from the current combat discussion. What are we fighting over? Because what you're fighting over is going to determine how you fight.
I mean, right now it's a chess match, right? That's what you're fighting over. And look at what mode you're playing in. That's where all the high level PvPers are. I mean, they're not playing Vandal Swarm or anything, but they're playing Arena Commander against each other. The PU is not where the game is being played right now because of many, many factors. The one being no point, right? No point at all in playing the game at the moment.
Right now, with 100 player servers and a relatively vast area to play in, the chances of organic PvP in Star Citizen are...
Jay says the biggest problem with Chris wanting movie World War II in space and real physics. Actual World War II combat is nothing like the movies, so combat and the physics model are always going to get in each other's way. Yeah, it's like conflicting views, and they're always fighting against each other.
Pretty slim. We have run relatively massive industrial operations, salvaging or mining oriented. With a combination of industrialists and combat security, I can count the amount of times our security forces have actually had a real threat to deal with on two hands.
Yeah.
Organic PvP is most likely to be small scale and highly asymmetric. It will be acts of piracy, where a group in combat ships target a solo player or small group in a hauler, or it will be a bounty hunter with a meta build PvP ship sneaking up on me while I'm doing Vaughn missions in my PvE meta Connie.
But there's no meta. What are you talking about?
Not that I'm salty whatsoever. Much more plentiful is instanced or arranged PvP, either through the Arena Commander module or through players agreeing to meet up and duke it out in the PU. And however it comes about, there is something clearly missing from these fights, a clear contested objective, and an incentive behind holding that objective. The goal is more often simply to win the fight, to progress your own skills, and to walk away with the bragging rights.
Yeah, we're in agreement here, but what does that look like in Star Citizen? They've really given us only the tiniest indication that we would make our own space stations. They have given us no indication that star systems would be owned and controlled by players. They've given us a very large indication that base building will be a thing, obviously, right? And they've told us about how big our territory will be. 5 kilometers by 5 kilometers or 8 kilometers by 8 kilometers. And that can be traversed incredibly quickly in a spaceship. That can also be bombed very easily with an A2 or whatever, right? So what are we fighting over? We still don't really know. We don't know what's the power struggle going to be between players. Why are we competing over resources? They've never laid that out. And I wish I recognized that a long time ago. And I would have been much more vocal and much louder earlier. But I don't think I think I would have fallen on way more deaf ears than I do now. But
these are perfectly fine things in the
crafting or riot. What are you crafting for? You can deliver crafting right now. But what's it going to do? It's going to feel awesome. But what's it going to do? You're not crafting to get better gear to go fight something more difficult, to get better crafting materials, to get better gear to go fight something more difficult. Right? You're not crafting so you can get better gear so you can fight off your enemies because you're competing over something. Like there's just nothing that doesn't make any sense. Right? Does Star Citizen need an endgame though? Endgame's a weird word because the answer is yes, but endgame isn't like level 60 in WoW, right? And I think that's how you're defining it. Endgame is, what do I do every day and why do I do it? That's how I look at it. And there are some players who are going to be totally fine pulling out their vulture and going salvaging every day, watching their money go up and buy things. But players are not going to. But what about, the PvPers? They're going to want to have territory. They're going to want to show that they won, right? Like Avenger Squadron is going to want to have that moon in the background or a part of it or something. To show they need a trophy, right? So that has to be a part of it.
Themselves, but they're not exactly quote-unquote realistic combat scenarios. You aren't fighting to hold an objective, you don't have any real pressure to get there first, and there's no real advantage gained if you win or lose. There is one key event, Jump Down, that does encourage groups of players to come together and vie for.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the feedback's not. I don't think he's saying this, by the way, but other people do. Just because there's no reason to play doesn't mean that people shouldn't be fighting or that their feedback doesn't matter.
Resources in a somewhat more realistic way. Ultimately, this single event suffers from two key issues. First, it's just been run so many times now that the gameplay has naturally become a bit stale. And secondly, the objective isn't really worth fighting over. The payout of taking and holding the facility is simply credits, and compared with other game loops, which involve less risk, it doesn't pay enough to incentivize large groups of players to fight over it. Hypothetically, if holding JT was the most valuable thing you could do in the game, then you would probably get carnage every time it ran. But in the game that is to come, I hope that we have a multitude of varied objectives to contest with one another, in PvP and with NPCs and PvE combat modes, and that the outcomes of these fights actually matter, where we have
Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. Because all that's going to happen, if that's the case, is a bunch of really large Zergs that are going to fight over things with, and in the current state of master modes, going to Zerg the fuck out of everybody, destroy everyone, win, even though they're less talented, and talk shit about it. And there's going to be like 4 orgs that control everything, and it's going to be boring as shit.
Meaningful.
See EVE Online.
Rewards that can give a victorious group a significant
See Albion Online. See every PvP MMO ever.
advantage to walk away with. And these objectives should offer varied gameplay experiences that reward different fleet compositions. Some may occur in open space and be a playground for heavy-hitting capital ship fleets, while others could be more atmospheric and reward groups that are able to bring fighter-heavy compositions to the battlesphere. One thing I do think Master Modes does really well is forcing players to commit to a fight, lessening the ability for people in zippy little ships to pop in, test the waters by popping off a few shots, and then run away if things appear a bit too hot for them.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing about Master Modes that I was very confused by, but as I got used to it, it was something I just got used to, I guess, was the ability to swap modes super quickly from Nav to SCM. The instant swap was the one that I was like...
Assume that most well-prepared fleets in the future will include elements of tackling to prevent navving out, and that any...
I mean, we have a Mantis, right? And we have other ships that tackle.
Not properly screened on their way out of a fight would continue to leave themselves incredibly vulnerable. And we get to a point where those looking to contest an objective will need to make a decision to either commit to a fight and see it through to the end, or turn tail and run if they aren't confident. This will all lend itself to good dynamic contesting of objectives. Furthermore, proper objectives should reward logistical prowess. I'm really looking forward to the asteroid-based missions shown in a recent ISC. And I could see these procedurally generated missions as a perfect mini-objective for orgs to contest. And here, when you don't know where you're going before it happens, being first to an unknown location would represent a massive advantage, since it would give you time to get entrenched. So individually, something like heavy fighters like the Vanguards might be outclassed by light fighters like the Gladius, but their bigger fuel tanks and faster jump drives are a huge advantage when it comes to getting into position on the objective first. So while some players may feel that Master Modes have taken away a huge degree of...
Only if... Okay, the quantum drive and like the getting on the objective first thing is what I'm thinking about. That only matters if everybody... If it's run like Wake of Disaster, where it pops up very rarely, but when it does, you should really want to go there. Right?
Player skill. I think there are other aspects
which I
of
don't
player
think
skill
goes
that
well.
will be rewarded in the future, and provide some counterbalance to this narrative. So all in all, my personal opinion is that we should wait and see with Master Modes and combat in SC in general. I don't believe there's anything inherently wrong with the concept, or with the goals that CIG are setting out to achieve with the system. And I do think that as time goes on and more elements of the game come online, we can get stuck into the weeds of balance. Something that's likely to be an ever-evolving concept and debate for as long as the game's around.
It's not a balance issue, it's a foundational problem.
As ever, I would be very interested to hear your views on the subject.
If it was just tweaking a few numbers, they would have done it already.
So please do let me know down in the comments below. But while I appreciate that it is a very contentious topic, if you can't approach it without typing in all caps or calling someone else stupid, then that does sound like a you problem, not an us problem. If you enjoyed the video and you think I earned it, then I would of course truly appreciate a thumbs up, and if you would hit subscribe.
Should I look at the comments to find the first person who calls them
with
stupid?
Something completely different in the form of a cargo guide, if I can ever work my way up that rep ladder. So do stay tuned for that. But for now, I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
I'm not going to look, but yeah, pretty good video. I just think I still feel very strongly that everybody needs to be as loud as possible and say what they feel about Master Modes, simply because it is the most foundational system, the most important system in the entire game, and they need to get it right. So he didn't address the solution. He clearly, based off the title of the video, "It's too early to judge master modes," is the solution to him is waiting. That's the solution. So that was it. And he is, unfortunately, exactly right. Because you are not in any control over when anything gets fixed. The only thing we can do is wait for them to do something with the feedback we gave them. But I think in the meantime, we can express to the people who are at the higher ups and the people who make the decisions of what's a priority and what isn't, should know that master modes should be the number one priority. The flight model should be the number one priority. Not just combat, but just the way everything is from a foundational, it should be the most solid experience possible and should be given all the resources needed to iterate on it quickly, patch by patch, consistently, and often. Every patch, there should be something in those notes about the flight model and adjustments and tweaks based off of our feedback, and there has not been enough of it. So it's not on Yogi necessarily. We don't know what's going on internally, but we know that things aren't moving as quickly as they should, and it is not too early to judge master modes. It's the exact time to be judging everything in this game. It is an alpha. We should be judging everything with very critical eyes and very, very detailed feedback, and constantly, because they should be working on this stuff constantly. Right? And that's it. Yeah, we can only judge what they give us. I'm tired of hearing about what you're going to do and then you don't do it. So we're going to continue to judge what you give us until you give us something worth not being so judgmental over. Right? And that's that. So it is not too early to judge master modes, in my opinion. But I absolutely understand where Loud Goods is coming from, because you can't do anything. They have to do it. They have to just do something with the feedback. And when that's going to happen,